Welcome to Alliance Military Database.
Mass Effect is one of the most impactful, iconic, influential game series of all time, one of the greatest RPGs of all time, and one of the greatest science fiction franchises of all time, inside or outside of gaming. Hello and welcome to the Exalted March. Today we're going to be taking a look at Mass Effect, in particular Mass Effect 1. So I'm going to be doing a retrospect/commentary on the opening mission of Mass Effect 1. I saw a comment recently by someone who said that they are actually new to the franchise, which can be somewhat hard to believe in 2018, but they said that they're somewhat new to the franchise and they were wondering if there was any content that I had or that I would recommend for someone who is new to Mass Effect. And so I've been planning to do a retrospect and a commentary on the opening mission in particular of Mass Effect 1, and so I thought, well, maybe it would be good if I did that commentary in a way that would be friendly to new players, newbie friendly, if you will. So I'm going to be light on the spoilers during this mission. I'm going to try and talk about the lore and the fiction and some of the main standout characters within the Mass Effect universe.
Confirm psychological profile.
And, I'll make some references to the future games or future events in Mass Effect 1, but I'm going to, as I said, try to keep the spoilers light, and hopefully players who are very familiar with Mass Effect 1 and those who might be new to the series can also enjoy this commentary. I'm going to let the audio play. I'm going to let some of the cutscenes play out without commentary and then hopefully chime in when I have a salient point to make. So I think this could be a great way for someone new to the series to kind of get into some of the content that Mass Effect BioWare focused YouTubers might have. In particular, I've done some of these similar, director's commentary style retrospects with Dragon Age, and I'll probably be doing some more with Mass Effect in the future as well.
Well, what about Shepard? He's a spacer, lived aboard starships most of his life.
Military service runs in the family. Both his parents were in the Navy.
He proved himself during the Blitz. Held off enemy forces on the ground until reinforcements arrived.
He's the only reason Elysium is still standing.
We can't question his courage.
Humanity needs a hero, and Shepard's the best we've got.
I'll make the call.
This opening exposition, the opening title card, is of course very reminiscent of Blade Runner. It sets up the fiction of the universe, and you don't see that too often. I think I've always interpreted it as being a very deliberate nod to the opening of Blade Runner.
In range. Initiating transmission sequence. Commander. We are connected. Calculating transit mass and destination.
I've always really appreciated the dialogue of Joker in this opening scene for some reason. I have no idea what approaching a relay should sound like, but it just, I don't know, it strikes me as there's a bit of verisimilitude. It just sounds very naturalistic. He sounds like an actual pilot of a spaceship, and there's actually very few moments like this, even in this series, but in other series it's almost non-existent. It seems appropriately piloty and also science-y. I say that as someone who is not a scientist and also not a pilot, so maybe it's just easy to fool me, but I've always appreciated Joker's dialogue in this approach run.
Hitting the relay in 3, 2, 1.
Thrusters, check. Navigation, check. Internal emissions sync engaged. All systems online.
Drift? Just under 1500K.
1500K.
I've always loved that.
1500 is good. Your captain will be pleased.
I hate that guy.
Nihilus gave you a compliment. So you hate him.
You remember to zip up your jumpsuit on the way out of the bathroom? That's good. I just jumped us halfway across the galaxy and hit a target the size of a pinhead. So that's incredible. Besides, Spectres are trouble. I don't like having them on board. Call me paranoid.
You're paranoid. The Council helped fund this project. They have a right to send someone to keep an eye on their investment.
Yeah, that is the official story. But only an idiot believes the official story.
I'm gonna say this a lot throughout this video, but it's just really solid naturalistic dialogue. It's one of my favorite things about Mass Effect 1 as a whole, but even as compared to the rest of the series. It's expository, you get some background information about the Council helping to fund what is clearly a prototype ship, but you also get a very good baseline for each of the two characters. Joker's the wisecracking pilot, Caden is the sensible officer, and, you know, they're both set up really neatly.
He's already here, Lieutenant. Tell Commander Shepard to meet me in the comm room for a debriefing.
You get that, Commander?
I'm on my way.
Is it me or does the captain always sound a little pissed off?
Only when he's talking to you, Joker. You probably don't want to keep the captain waiting, Commander.
The subtlety of the score in Mass Effect 1 will continue to always be one of my favorite things. It's present often, it's very subtle, and it just adds so much to the ambience.
The captain's waiting for you in the comm room, Commander.
The art direction of Mass Effect 1, this is something that, you know, I've said I don't know how many times, but this is a perfect time to state it again. Derek Watts, the director of, the art director for Mass Effect, for the Mass Effect trilogy, I think described it really well. He and Casey Hudson wanted the world to feel futuristic, but also lived in. And there's some really good instances of that I might get a chance to point out here as we go along.
Sounds like you don't trust our Turian guest.
Sorry, Commander, just having a chat with Adams down at engineering. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. But you have to admit, something's odd about this mission. The whole crew feels it.
You think the Alliance brass is holding out on us?
If all we're supposed to do is test out the stealth system, why is Captain Anderson in charge? And then there's Nihilus. Spectres are elite operatives, top covert agents. Why send a Spectre, a Turian Spectre, on a shakedown run? It doesn't add up.
You don't trust Nihilus?
I don't like Turians in general. It runs in my family. My grandfather fought in the First Contact War, lost a lot of friends when the Turians hit us.
Nihilus is no ordinary Turian.
You've got that right, Commander. We're an Alliance vessel, human military, but Nihilus doesn't answer to the captain like the rest of us. Spectres operate outside the normal chain of command, and they don't come along just to observe shakedown runs.
This entire sequence, again, I'm going to repeat myself, but it's very efficiently done. It's very neatly done, and if you're not a writer, it might not strike you how impressive this is. But in just in a couple of short conversations, we've already set up something about the galactic politics. We've already understood something about espionage in the military as far as the Spectres and how they're these elite agents that have a lot of power, but also draw a lot of mistrust. And we've also already established one of the major historical military conflicts that plays a large in galactic politics as far as the First Contact War, the war between the Turians and the humans.
The Normandy's the only ship with this prototype drive. But why are we fully staffed? A skeleton crew would be cheaper, less chance of security leaks too. Plus there's Nihilus. It's pretty obvious this shakedown run is just a cover.
For what?
Damned if I know, Commander. We're out here.
Also, at this point in time, although it's very familiar to those of us who are veterans of the series,
I'll see if I can get some
this level of conversation, even though it's not pertinent to the overall plot, it does help with world building. It also gives the player a good chance to explore and get familiar with that dialogue wheel. Options on the left expand the conversation, options on the right get you done a little more quickly. Top options are typically more diplomatic, and bottom options are typically a little more, a little more rough around the edges, but maybe a little more honest as well.
Kill anyone who gets in their way.
You
watched too many spy vids, Jenkins.
What do you think, Commander? We won't be staying on Eden Prime too long, will we? I'm itching for some real action.
I sincerely hope you're kidding, Corporal. Your real action usually ends with me patching up crew members in the infirmary.
Only a fool goes looking for a fight, Corporal.
Sorry, Commander, but this waiting's killing me. I've never been on a mission like this before, not one with a Spectre on board.
You're from Eden Prime, aren't you, Jenkins? What's it like?
It's very peaceful, Commander. They've been real careful with development, so you don't have any city noise or pollution. My parents lived on the outskirts of the colony. At night, I used to climb this big hill and stare across the fields back at the lights from the main settlement. It was gorgeous. But when I got older, I realized it was a little too calm and quiet for me. That's why I joined the Alliance. Even Paradise gets boring after a while.
Any idea why Eden Prime was chosen as our
I
destination?
really wish that devices like this would have been implied more in the beginning of Mass Effect 2 and 3. Again, it's very subtle, but when Jenkins just tells you about his childhood and tells you about Eden Prime, the planet that we're about to drop down onto, it grounds a really fantastic science fiction world into something personal. And believe me, as we see the events that are coming up, that grounding is really important in order to lend weight to what might otherwise be dismissible as just an action set-piece opening mission that doesn't mean anything. Obviously, Eden Prime does mean something, not just because of what's happening in these early conversations, but of what we see later on throughout the game, the impacts, etc. But again, it's a short, couple lines of dialogue, but it does have, I think, a subtle impact on the viewer.
Just treat this like every other assignment you've had and everything will work out.
Easy for you to say. You proved yourself in the Blitz. Everybody knows what you can do. This is my big chance. I need to show the brass what I can do.
You're young, Corporal. You have a long career ahead of you. Don't do something stupid to mess it up.
The roleplay premise for this Shepard was actually slightly more, I don't want to say xenophobic, but a little more human first, a little bit mistrustful of the other species, definitely very professional, leaning somewhat Paragon as far as he's smart enough to be diplomatic, but I really need to make an entire separate video about this, but the middle option in Mass Effect 1 was really great for a sort of balanced, moderate view and not necessarily a smart aleck response, which is what it is in some other BioWare games.
Commander Shepard.
So a very balanced but very pragmatic Shepard. Not arbitrarily median, just very pragmatic, sometimes direct, sometimes diplomatic, a little human first, very much pro-military and pro-human.
I've heard it's quite beautiful.
They say it's a paradise.
Yes, a paradise. Serene, tranquil, safe. Eden Prime has become something of a symbol for your people, hasn't it? Proof that humanity can not only establish colonies across the galaxy, but also protect them. But how safe is it, really?
Are you trying to scare me, Spectre?
Your people are still newcomers, Shepard.
And there you see, kind of on that point about role-playing, Shepard takes the opportunity to posture up a little bit against Nihilus, the Spectre.
The commander what's really going on.
This mission is far more than a simple shakedown run.
Is someone gonna fill me in, Captain?
We're making a covert pickup on Eden Prime. That's why we needed the stealth systems operational.
So they're going to talk a little bit about the main plot. They're going to mention the Protheans, but I do just want to say again really quickly, basically everything in these opening conversations is so efficiently done, including Nihilus. First Turian you've ever seen, the first alien, technically, that you ever see in Mass Effect, and he hits the marks pretty well as a Turian, but just overall representing the alien, segment of the science fiction. He's professional. He's terse in the way that Turians are. He's a little dismissive of Shepard as a human. He's a bit of a stereotype as we see more diverse reflection of Turians throughout the series, but he really hits the mark for the first Turian you see on screen.
Are we expecting trouble?
I'm always expecting trouble.
There's more, Shepard. Nihilus isn't just here for the beacon. He's also here to evaluate you.
What's going on, Captain?
The Alliance has been pushing for this for a long time. Humanity wants a larger role in shaping interstellar policy. We want more say with the Citadel Council. The Spectres represent the Council's power and authority. If they accept a human into their ranks, it shows how far the Alliance has come.
You held off an enemy assault during the Blitz single-handed. You showed not only courage, but also incredible skill. That's why I put your name forward as a candidate for the Spectres.
Why would a Turian want a human in the Spectres?
Not all Turians resent humanity. Some of us see the potential of your species. We see what you have to offer to the rest of the galaxy, and to the Spectres. We are an elite group. It's rare to find an individual with the skills we seek. I don't care that you're human, Shepard. I only care that you can do the job.
Just tell me what I have to do.
I need to see your skills for myself, Commander. Eden Prime will be the first of several missions together.
You'll be in charge of the ground team. Secure the beacon and get it onto the ship ASAP. Nihilus will accompany you to observe.
What I mentioned earlier about Nihilus being a little bit dismissive of Shepard as a human, you hear him say there, I don't care if you're a human, I just care if you can do the job. It's a great balance. Makes it so that it's not easy to peg all Turians as being xenophobic towards humans, but also still keeps, a certain element of perhaps mistrust underlying that. That's great subtlety, it's great nuance.
This beacon. What if it's a weapons archive? We can't let it fall into the wrong hands.
I talked over a little bit of them, mentioning the fact that this is a Prothean artifact, and of course, if you're coming into the series, depending on if you're maybe in the middle of your first Mass Effect 1 playthrough, maybe if you haven't gotten to Mass Effect 2 yet, there's a lot to say about the Turians. I'm not going to spoil anything. It's interesting, though, how neatly they set up the Protheans. In the fiction, and then, at the end of Mass Effect 1, we also learned some really interesting stuff about the Protheans, and so it's weird to think about it in hindsight, because I think so much of my view of it is shaped by my initial playthrough and finding those discoveries for the first time, but they did a really good job of foreshadowing and leaving clues, but not spelling it out entirely.
Just give the word, Captain.
We should be getting close to Eden.
Captain, we got a problem.
What's wrong, Joker?
Transmission from Eden Prime, sir. You better see this.
Bring it up on screen.
This is an excellent instance of weight really being communicated, and there's no dialogue. I'm just going to let it play.
I repeat, heavy casualties! We can't get evac! They came out of nowhere! We need...
Everything cuts out after that. No comm traffic at all. Just goes dead. There's nothing.
Reverse and hold at 38.5.
The mandible twitch, man. It's excellent.
17 minutes out, Captain. No other Alliance ships in the area.
Take us in, Joker. Fast and quiet. Mission
just got a lot more complicated. I should say it's not that there's no dialogue, it's that there's minimal dialogue from the three people in the room, and just the cuts to, there's another one, just the facial expression with Shepard, and yeah, to think that facial animations in Mass Effect 1 could communicate so much, and then, too much has been said already about the facial animations in Andromeda. I'm not going to touch that, but I really like the tail end of this scene and what they're able to communicate just with the cuts to the reaction shots of Shepard, Anderson, and Nihilus.
Somebody was doing some serious digging here, Captain.
Your team's the muscle in this operation, Commander. Go in heavy and head straight for the dig site.
What about survivors, Captain?
Helping survivors is a secondary objective. The beacon's your top priority.
Approaching drop point 1.
Nihilus, you're coming with us?
I move faster on my own.
Nihilus will scout out ahead. He'll feed you status reports throughout the mission. Otherwise, I want radio silence.
I don't like putting my life in the hands of a Turian, sir.
Nihilus is on our side. He wants you in the Spectres, and he wants that beacon.
Ready and able, sir.
The mission's yours now, Shepard. Good luck!
We are approaching drop point 2.
Ship perimeter secure, Commander.
This place got hit hard, Commander. Hostiles everywhere. Keep your guard up.
Yeah, so I did go with a Vanguard for this Shepard. I hadn't played as a Vanguard in quite some time, probably a few playthroughs since I had done a trilogy run as a Vanguard. And Vanguard is really not too different from... I really don't think it's very appealing in Mass Effect 1. It just kind of feels like a less powerful adept, and then, you know, not as proficient as a soldier. Mass Effect 2 and 3 is really when the Vanguard kind of starts to come into its own, and in large part because of the charge ability, but yeah, so this is technically a Vanguard build for Shepard. Also, I guess now would be a good time to note that this is a pretty heavily modded version of Mass Effect 1, you know, mainly the main Mass Effect's enhanced texture mod. I can't remember the exact abbreviation. It's a long abbreviation. The main one that everyone always uses as far as texture mods. And in fact, I think I might have installed it in combination with a lot for ME1. A lot is, of course, the other popular texture mod for the Mass Effect series. And I think there might be one or two other mods that I have on here, and I was playing this in 4K, although I think when I upload this commentary it'll probably be in 1080. Eden Prime looks good for a game that's more than 10 years old. The controls in Mass Effect 1 never quite felt weighted enough, if that makes sense. With the movement and the shooting always felt just it didn't feel visceral enough. Guns and recoil didn't feel like they had enough weight. They didn't feel like I had enough movement. You always felt a little bit floaty when you were moving around. You know, footsteps never really felt, you know, heavy and grounded and sort of stuck the way that they do, actually, quite frankly, in Mass Effect 2 and 3. Your boots kind of sound and, I don't know, feel heavier, and that kind of lends well to the storm, to the sprint, and to the, you know, to the roll in Mass Effect 3.
What the hell are those?
Gas bags. Don't worry, they're harmless.
Target practice is what they are. I will say, though, that it's one of those things where the Mass Effect 1 combat just, look, it's not good, okay? It just isn't good, but I've played it for so many years. You just kind of get used to it, and you kind of, I honestly, at this point, I actually enjoy it. I'm not going to lie. Even though I know, technically speaking, it's not good for the reasons that I just mentioned, I enjoy the heck out of it. And I particularly like the customization when you get to the multiple underlays, multiple mods on weapons, the different ammo types, and, you know, it can really be very enjoyable. I also have to say I do like the easily toggleable helmets just straight from the inventory. That might seem super small to some people. I just kind of feel like it's, you know, that should always be in there.
All clear.
Rip right through his shields. We're out of chance.
Oh,
Sometimes
Jenkins.
Marines die. The rest of
We
us
hardly
just have
knew
to
you.
carry on.
I don't know. It's just like it's with this weird morbid tradition. Every new playthrough of Mass Effect comes with a new death of Jenkins. It's also really worth noting, if you are new to Mass Effect, maybe you haven't even started a playthrough yet, when you are, or if you're in the middle of your first Mass Effect 1 playthrough, update Charm and or Intimidate as much as possible. Literally try and keep that maxed out every time. Whatever amount of points that you get, each level up, try and keep that maxed all the time. I've just found that over multiple playthroughs, you're going to want that, you know, in the instance. There's probably few things that are more frustrating than seeing the grayed out Persuade option. That's, you know, you have to have a certain amount of Paragon or Renegade points to access the most persuasive dialogue options, and it's incredibly frustrating when you see one of those grayed out. So I would say, in my experience, after having done, you know, more than 10 playthroughs of the entire trilogy, keep either Charm or Intimidate maxed out if if at all possible. Also, whatever the class skill tree is for any of your companions, keep that maxed out. Keep that sentinel tree maxed out for Kaidan, and also, you know, really have Kaidan focus on overload. Also, Kaidan is just incredibly squishy. He drops so easily in Mass Effect 1, so just definitely make sure and have his barrier upgraded also. Yeah, the reticle size being directly tied to the, you know, the skill tree of whatever that particular weapon is, and having it be so inaccurate is just, you know, it seemed archaic at the time, and you know, more than 10 years on, it really just, it looks so dated and plays, you know, quite dated. Nonetheless, you see me getting hits with it. It's taken a while. It's taken a while to get good with such an inaccurate system, but you find a way. One of the things that I really liked about the Geth as antagonists, in particular in Mass Effect 1, was the fact that they felt really menacing, ominous, and nebulous. We just didn't know enough about them. You know, I know for some people that made them feel generic, but I really think that the writers at BioWare paid off on the nebulous nature of them in the later games. Again, because I'm trying to make this somewhat new player friendly, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but the way that they end up fleshing out the Geth in Mass Effect 2 and 3, it subverts your expectations, and it's really interesting. But for Mass Effect 1, you just feel like you don't know enough about them, and they're quite ominous for that reason.
Scrapes and burns, nothing serious. The others weren't so lucky. Oh man, we were patrolling the perimeter when the attack hit. We tried to get off a distress call, but they cut off our communications. I've been fighting for my life ever since.
Where's the rest of your squad?
We tried to double back to the beacon, but we walked into an ambush. I don't think any of the others... I think I'm the only one left.
This isn't your fault, Williams. You couldn't have done anything to save them.
Yes, sir. We held our position as long as we could, until the Geth overwhelmed us.
The Geth haven't been seen outside the Veil in nearly 200 years. Why are they here now?
They must have come for the beacon. The dig site is close, just over that rise. It might still be there.
We could use your help, Williams.
Aye, aye, sir. It's time for payback.
Again, just that one little line by Kaidan, you know, kind of cues the player into a little bit of the background on the Geth.
Synthetics, non-organic life forms.
The writing throughout Mass Effect 1 is just, it's really, really strong in a lot of those things. They had a lot to set up, and they did it really gracefully in most places.
Drove them into exile. Well, after that, they just kind of disappeared behind the Perseus Veil. Nobody's really heard much from them since.
Describe what happened leading up to the attack.
We were sent out a couple of nights ago from the main colony to secure the area. Seemed like a routine patrol, until the Geth hit us. We never knew they were coming.
What happened to the researchers at the dig site?
I don't know. They set up camp near the beacon, The 232 was with them. Maybe their unit fared better than mine.
Tell me everything you know about the beacon.
They were doing some digging out here to extend the monorail and expand the colony. A few weeks ago, they unearthed some Prothean ruins, and the beacon. Suddenly, every scientific expert in the colony was interested. That's when they brought us in to secure the site. I don't know much about the beacon itself, but I heard one of the researchers say this could be the biggest scientific discovery of the century.
Have you seen a Turian Spectre around here?
There aren't any Turians on Eden Prime, none that I've ever met. Not sure I'd be able to tell if one was a Spectre anyway.
If you saw this guy, you'd know. Carries enough firepower to wipe out a whole platoon. Luckily, he's on our side.
Sorry, like I said, no Turians.
Move out.
And of course, that is the first conversation you have with the lovely and talented Miss Ashley Williams, who has been a staple through many of my playthroughs in Mass Effect. She was the love interest of choice for Shepard maybe on my third playthrough, but I think she's for me, she's ended up being the canon love interest for my male Shepard, and she's a staple though as far as gameplay, because she's pretty legitimately tanky. She does good damage too if you really upgrade all of her sniper rifle skill tree, but she takes a ton of damage if you get the appropriate damage resistances up when leveling her up. So she's just been one of those characters that has made it into the party more often than not on various playthroughs. The colonist on Pikes thing, I'm just going to call that out because it's really creepy and brutal. Also, kind of, I wouldn't say uncharacteristically so, but it really sets the tone early, and yeah, it just kind of lends to what I was mentioning earlier about the Geth.
Negative contact, Commander.
Also, as you can probably tell, I tend to save a lot. I do want to say though that I think the Unreal Engine 3 has aged really well. All of the Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 were made in the Unreal Engine, and I feel like that engine has aged well, but also the use of it in Mass Effect 1 I think has aged really well graphically. This is kind of, just a side comment, but in a weird way, I feel like Mass Effect 1 has aged better than Mass Effect 2, and maybe even better than Mass Effect 3 as far as the visuals. I know some people found Mass Effect 1 to be a little more generic as far as the visuals, but I think it actually, I don't know, I guess maybe classically sci-fi is not the right term for it, but something about it is maybe a little less stylized than 2 and 3, and also, the lighting is a little less bloomy than it is in 2 in particular. Also, I will note, in addition to being heavily modded as far as the texture mods that were installed, there were several edits made on this playthrough to the INI files, to the configuration files, to, increase the draw rate on shadows, etc. Mass Effect 1 can look really good, despite its age.
This is the dig site. The beacon was right here. It must have been moved.
By who? Our side or the Geth?
Hard to say. Maybe we'll know more after we check out the research camp.
You think anyone got out of here alive?
If they were lucky. Maybe hiding up in the camp. It's just on the top of this ridge, up the ramps.
Change of plans, Shepard. There's a small spaceport up ahead. I want to check it out. I'll wait for you there.
The inventory management system kind of goes without saying is pretty terrible in Mass Effect 1. Again, if you're a veteran of the series, you're just totally used to that, but looking back on it, yeah, a lot of time spent turning things into Omnigel.
Looks like they hit the camp hard.
It's a good place for an ambush. Keep your guard up. Oh god, they're still alive.
What did the Geth do to them?
Hostile spotted.
Yeah, just nothing has weight. Or, I mean, in some sense, it just feels like nothing has physics either. Even when you land a shot, it just doesn't have the same sort of impact. And, you know, when you hit people in Mass Effect 2, particularly some of the weaker enemies, you can really feel like they're just getting slugged by that ammunition.
Eden Prime will never be the same again.
In Mass Effect 1, it just feels like you're shooting through a paper target. I really like some of these upcoming conversations with some of the Eden Prime colonists and scientists. There's actually, you know, especially when you do your multiple playthroughs and you approach some of these differently, you really start to get the feel for, you know, this was actually a great showcase for how much width and latitude there is in the dialogue. In particular in Mass Effect 1, I really feel like it gets a little bit more narrow in 2 and 3. You know, that probably, you know, is also because of the additional, you know, voice acting requirements and things like that, but I really like the amount of space you had to try different things with the dialogue in Mass Effect 1. The decryption / hacking / I don't know what, recovering artifact minigame, serviceable, but especially when recovering artifacts, like what? How does this relate to a mummified Solarian? What am I doing to this poor mummified Solarian exactly? Doesn't really make any sense. I've actually always gotten a kick out of it. I'm not the best at it, but, you know, it's not bad as far as minigames go.
Thank the Maker.
Hurry! Close the door before they come back.
Don't worry. We'll protect you.
Thank you. I think we'll be okay now. It looks like everyone's gone.
You're Dr. Warren, the one in charge of the excavation. Do you know what happened to the beacon?
It was moved to the spaceport this morning. Manuel and I stayed behind to help pack up the camp. When the attack came, the Marines held them off long enough for us to hide. They gave their lives to save us.
No one is saved. The age of humanity is ended. Soon, only ruin and corpses will remain.
What's wrong with your assistant?
Manuel has a brilliant mind, but he's always been a bit unstable. Genius and madness are two sides of the same coin.
I can't remember if I'm patient or not with Manuel on this playthrough. I've definitely tried every option at this point, but I genuinely don't remember what happened in this one.
I am not mad. I'm the only sane one left.
I gave him an extra dose of his meds after the attack.
You can, apparently I was thinking about it for a while. Again, this is not a Let's Play. I'm commenting on this footage after the fact. And I meant to post this actually quite a while ago. So this footage was actually probably recorded a couple months ago, if not actually maybe a few months ago.
Agents of the Destroyers, bringers of darkness, heralds of our extinction.
We could hear the battle outside. Gunfire, screams. I thought it would never end. Then everything went quiet. We just sat there, too afraid to move, until you came along.
Can you tell me anything about the beacon?
It's some type of data module from a galaxy-wide communications network. Remarkably well preserved. It could be the greatest scientific discovery of our lifetime. Miraculous new technologies, groundbreaking medical advances. Who knows what secrets are locked inside?
We have unearthed the heart of evil, awakened the beast, unleashed the darkness.
Manuel, please. This isn't the time.
Did you notice a Turian in the area?
I saw him, the Prophet, leader of the enemy. He was here before the attack.
That's impossible. Nihilus was with us in the Normandy before the attack. He couldn't have been here.
I'm sorry. Manuel's still a bit unsettled. We haven't seen your Turian. We've been hiding in here since the attack.
What's wrong with your assistant?
Manuel has a brilliant mind, but he's always been a bit unstable. Genius and madness are two sides of the same.
I think Shepard might have had enough.
To see the future, to see the destruction rushing towards us, to understand there is no escape, no hope.
I gave him an extra dose of his meds after the attack.
Say goodnight, Manuel.
You cannot silence the truth. My voice must be heard.
Oh my God! What did you do?
That might have been a little extreme, Commander.
You can't just go around whacking people in the head.
Just a little bump on the head. Let him sleep it off.
I suppose you're right.
The callousness of that moment. I don't know if it's aged poorly or aged well, but there's just something about the blatant disregard for the non-aggression principle there by Shepard, just taking liberties, knocking dudes out, asking questions later. I don't know why I get a kick out of it. I think I probably did that once, and then I just thought it was so ridiculously uneven and short-tempered. I don't think I took that option for the next 5 playthroughs, but, you know, after a while, you just kind of do it just to kind of get some novelty.
Saren. Nihilus. This isn't your mission, Saren. What are you doing here?
And, of course, first look at Saren Arturius.
I wasn't expecting to find the Geth here. The situation's bad.
Don't worry. I've got it under control.
You know, I like Saren as an antagonist. But having read Drew Karpyshyn's prequel novel, Revelation, he is a little bit disappointing in the game. I thought that he was given a little more, I don't know if depth is the right word. There was just a little bit more to him, and he was just, there were instances where you could really see his cruelty a bit more, and him torturing witnesses and things like that. And he's not like mustache twirling evil. He's just, he's willing to go to any lengths to, technically do his job as a Spectre, but he takes a perverse sort of pleasure from the power that he has over people who, the criminals as they may be. And by the way, that shot that we just saw was, again, it's one of those things where after a time you just don't even really bother to look at it, but that was a really cool moment the first time it happened. And here's another colonist conversation coming up where you'll actually get to see an instance of the Paragon option coming into play early on, which is why you should always try and keep it upgraded as much as you can. But again, I like the amount of levels that you can get to in this conversation. There's an appropriate amount of depth to it. And not a super consequential, not major characters, not a major plot point or anything.
When we saw
These are
that
the
ship,
conversations that I
thought it was
really
all
enjoyed in
over.
Mass Effect 1.
It showed up right before the attack. Knew it was trouble the second I saw it, so we made a break for the sheds.
What else can you tell me about the ship you saw?
I was too busy running to get a clear look at it. I think it landed over near the spaceport.
Tell them about the noise, Cole. That awful noise.
It was emitting some kind of signal as it descended. It sounded like the shriek of the damned. Only it was coming from inside your own head.
It was probably trying to block communications.
Whatever it was, felt like it was tearing right through my skull. Almost made it impossible to think.
Tell me everything you remember about the attack.
The three of us were working the crops when that ship showed up. We just saw it and ran. I don't know what happened to the rest of the crew.
They were by the garage, over near the spaceport, right where that ship came down. No way they survived.
You don't know that. We survived. If they made it to the garage, they could have had a fighting chance.
Do you know anything about the Prothean beacon they dug up?
We're just farmers. We heard they found something out there, but it never really mattered to us. Not until now.
I have to go.
Hey, Cole, we're just a bunch of farmers. These guys are soldiers. Maybe we should give them the stuff.
Jeez, Blake, you gotta learn when to shut up.
You have something to tell me, Cole?
Some guys at the spaceport were running a small smuggling ring. Nothing major. In exchange for a cut of the profits, we let them store packages in our sheds.
You greedy bastard. You weren't running for your life. You were running to check on your merchandise.
No, it's not like that. I just knew there were some packages.
I really like mixing up the responses, you know, in all of the Mass Effect games, but in particular in Mass Effect 1. I've been meaning to do another video about that, but the Renegade and the middle options are really, they're not over the top. They're really satisfying. And of course here now we see the Paragon Persuade there, which you need to have your bar as maxed out as it can be at that point in order to get the smuggled equipment
Who's
here.
your contact at the spaceport, Cole? What's his name?
He's not a bad guy. I don't want to get him in trouble. Besides, I'm not a snitch.
He might have something to do with this whole attack, Cole. We need his name. It's important.
Yeah, okay, you're right. His name's Powell. Works the docks at the spaceport, if he's still alive.
I have to go.
Good luck.
Commander, it's Nihilus.
Something's moving over behind those crates.
Wait! Don't shoot! I'm one of you! I'm human!
What are you doing sneaking around back there?
I'm sorry, I was hiding from those creatures. My name's Powell. I saw what happened to that Turian. The other one shot him.
What the hell are you talking about?
There were two Turians here. Your friend and another one he called Saren. I think they knew each other. Your friend seemed to relax. He let his guard down. And Saren killed him. Shot him right in the back. I'm just lucky he didn't see me behind the crates.
We were told a Prothean beacon was brought to the spaceport. What happened to it?
It's over on the other platform. Probably where that guy Saren was headed. He hopped on the cargo train right after he killed your friend. I knew that beacon was trouble. Everything's gone to hell since we found it. First that damn mothership showed up, then the attack. They killed everyone. Everyone. If I hadn't been behind the crates, I'd be dead too.
Tell me about the Geth attack.
It was quick. 1 minute that ship was descending, the next, those Geth were swarming over the platform. Thousands of them. They must have been inside that mothership. They shot anything that moved. It was a massacre.
How come you're the only one who
It's a bit of a holdover, I think, from maybe earlier RPGs and earlier BioWare games, but the ability to just ask multiple people the same things that, you know, from an exposition standpoint, from a plot standpoint, from a character standpoint, don't really give much to you, the player, except the feeling of actually investigating things. You still see it in modern BioWare games also, but not as much. And I really kind of feel like it's, especially early in the game, and for that matter, early within a series, it really allows you to feel like you're building the picture of the world for yourself. And I think that it shouldn't be underestimated how important that actually is.
You ditch work, then you cower back here and do nothing while the Geth butcher everyone else.
I don't even have a gun. What was I supposed to do? Run out there and die? I couldn't save them. Nobody could. It was horrible.
You're Cole's contact here on the docks for the smuggling ring.
What? No! I mean, what does it matter now? So I'm a smuggler, who cares? My supervisor's dead, the entire crew's dead. Doesn't matter now, does it?
Anything hidden nearby that we could use against the Geth?
A shipment of grenades came through last week. Nobody notices if a few small pieces go missing from the military orders.
You greedy son of a bitch. We're out here trying to protect your sorry ass, and all you can think about is how you can rip us off?
I never thought you'd actually need those grenades. Who'd want to...
And also, great reaction from Ashley. I mean, again, you had stuff like that in earlier BioWare games, but
now
I really feel like the party members started to be showcased more during the cinematic moments, starting with Mass Effect.
A lot of Marines died here, Powell. Those grenades could have come in handy. If I were you, I'd think of some way to make it up to them.
Yeah, okay. There is something else I was saving. Could be worth a fortune. Experimental technology, top of the line. Take it. I don't need it. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. Really, I'm sorry.
Tell me about this mothership you saw.
I've never seen anything like it before. It was huge. Landed over near that platform. The whole place got dark as it came down. And it was making this noise, this sound that bored right into your brain. That's what woke me up. The attack came a few minutes later.
Is there anything else you can tell me about the beacon?
They brought it here this morning. We loaded it up onto the train and shipped it to the other platform. Hard to believe that was only a few hours ago. Feels like a whole other life.
We need to find that beacon before it's too late.
Take the cargo train. That's where the other Turian went. I can't stay here. I need to get away from all this.
And in particular here, towards the latter part of this mission, you really start to see some of the clunkiness involved in the combat. The cover's not great. Sometimes you stick when you don't want to. Sometimes you don't stick when you want to. Sometimes Shepard doesn't automatically adjust for the height of the cover. It's just not great. The speed of movement, again, is not good, which you don't always have to be quick. Sometimes it's even better if they move a little bit slower for the sake of realism, but yeah, you can really see the instances where combat is just not good. Amazing to think, though, like, it never stopped me, and it never stopped me from continually replaying the game time and time again. I mean, I think that really says something about just how good, the story and the characters were, is that we all knew the combat wasn't good, but that just wasn't the point. You were playing Mass Effect, and you were playing Mass Effect again, despite the combat.
Not in the middle of a fight!
You know what I do always find somewhat interesting in retrospect? You can see the HUD element pop up when you take down one of the Geth. You get experience points, and then you basically get credits. And so I guess that's just credits from some parts or some components that we stripped off of them, because, I mean, are the Geth carrying around money? Like, I don't understand. Some things that I haven't gotten a chance to comment on yet, which I'm just going to go ahead and throw in since we're starting to near the spaceport. The design of the Normandy is incredible. And we didn't really get a chance to look at it too much except for there at the beginning, but as far as ships go, it feels like, you know, it's a grounded science fiction design with some flair for style, etc. It's obviously iconic. It's become one of the most easily recognizable elements. You know, pretty much Shepard and the Normandy are Mass Effect, and then on the interior as well. Like, it's got that bit of futuristic but lived in, and I talked about this earlier. Derek Watts and Casey Hudson had talked about how the art direction for Mass Effect, they didn't want it to be post-apocalyptic, they didn't want it to be completely run down, but they also didn't want it to be pristine, perfect sci-fi. They wanted it to look like something that was architected and planned and designed to be pristine, perfect sci-fi, and then a little bit of the real world got onto it. So subtle scratches, little bits of dirt, not a lot, just enough for it to feel lived in. You see that when you look at the armors, you see that when you look at the environments, but you also see it when you look at the Normandy, on the exterior and the interior. It's always been one of my favorite aspects of the design in Mass Effect, and I think that the Normandy is one of the best examples of it. When you read the lore about how the CIC is sort of designed to be more towards the back, because that's sort of a Turian design philosophy, that the commanders are more in the middle or towards the back of the ship, because they essentially want all of the crewmen and the pilot laid out in front of them. You know, just little details like that that sort of cue you into parts of the world. I've just always really appreciated things like that. That CODEX entry in particular was like, this is a really great detail to have added.
Demolition charges. The Geth must have planted them.
Hurry! We need to find them all and shut them down.
This is one of the worst combat sections in the entire franchise. It really is. It's one of the worst combat sequences in the entire franchise. It's never been good. Killing the Geth is relatively easy, and you know, the interface isn't really intuitive as far as figuring out where the charges were. I think I remember on my first playthrough ever, I was like, where the hell are these charges? I didn't even notice the fact that you've got the little flag markers on your minimap, basically telling you where they are. So, you know, but basically besides that, I mean, it's really not hard to find the charges, it's not hard to disarm the charges, and it's not hard to kill the Geth. It's just annoying to do them both. And the layout of it is terrible, the cover opportunities aren't great. So yeah, I don't know. I've never liked this instance of combat. When I really think about it, I think every time I play it, I just think about how poorly designed it is. And you know, actually even, I mean, the controls and the lack of refined combat in Mass Effect 1 certainly contribute to this instance of clunky combat. But you know, even if the controls were better and the physics were better and the gun mechanics were better, the layout of it is still just not good. And, you know, to kind of talk about a couple of other things that, you know, this video and this mission wouldn't really give us an opportunity to discuss. But I do want to, you know, since this is intended to be sort of like a newbie-friendly, a new player-friendly sort of look at Mass Effect. One of my favorite aspects of it, as I mentioned earlier, was sort of the galactic politics, and we only get to see a small instance of that in this mission, but Mass Effect got right not just the feelings of different species with different interests, different governments with different interests contending against each other, but the nebulous nature of that. The idea that, well, yeah, maybe it makes sense not to trust the Turians, or maybe that's completely asinine and xenophobic and backwards. And they don't prejudge that. And what I also appreciate, and this veers slightly towards a political commentary, but they don't just use it as an analog for types of discrimination in the real world which are blatant and clearly not acceptable. Like, they actually treat it with a certain amount of respect, that like, this is an alien species. They did try to nuke you out of existence when they first met you, specifically when we're talking about the Turians and the humans, and so they treat that risk with the appropriate amount of weight, but they also weigh the other side of that with, there are tremendous benefits, like the Normandy, which is a joint effort between humans and Turians. There's a lot to be gained by working with other species, but there's also a lot to risk. And I like the fact that although they do steer a little bit towards, hey, the more Paragon option, the quote-unquote good option is to work with all of the different species, they don't make that black and white. I think that's actually, they get that a little bit wrong in Andromeda in particular, and actually in Mass Effect Andromeda, it should be even more gray area. It's actually, I feel a little more black and white when it shouldn't be. In Mass Effect 1, I think it's just right. I think it leans a little bit into, kind of steering you more towards being cooperative and that being the good guy thing to do. But I think that they weigh it actually pretty damn well. And that's such an interesting topic to deal with in science fiction, right? Other species, which, you might have more in common with them than but there are also some significant differences. And how do you deal with those differences? And what are the risks? And what are the risks if you don't try and deal with those differences? It's one of the most interesting things about Mass Effect, and so I had to mention that because this mission's not going to give us more of an opportunity to talk about it, but it's one of the key hallmarks of Mass Effect and what's so good about the franchise. Another thing worth mentioning, we only get to see Kaidan and Ashley as far as the crew members here. For a lot of people, Kaidan and Ashley are the least favorite of the Mass Effect 1 crew. I actually love Kaidan and Ashley both. I think they're fantastic. I really like Kaidan, probably. I might like Kaidan more than anybody. Kaidan is my boy. He's sensible, he's low-key, he's a moderate, he sees things down the middle. I love that about him. And I actually think Ashley is quite endearing. I know a lot of people don't like Ashley. I love the fact that she's family-centric. I love the fact that she's big sister. She takes care of her little sisters. Those were some of the greatest moments, especially in the first playthrough, when you realize that this person, who has been through a lot, who has seen a lot, is telling you about how her father used to read Tennyson to her, and she likes poetry, and she's close with her sisters, and she thinks about back home, and just... all of that it was so grounded, and it just felt, it made everything feel so naturalistic, and it made them feel like people that you wanted to get to know. But, Rex, Garrus, Liara, and Tali, God, there's just not enough time to talk about all of them. They're fantastic. It's one of the ultimate draws to the Mass Effect franchise, obviously, as we all know, and in particular, the fact that they are set up to be dynamic, I feel. They are one way in Mass Effect 1. They don't change too much. Tali a little bit, Liara a little bit, Ashley really not so much, Kaidan really not so much, Rex not really that much, and Garrus a little bit. But they grow and evolve throughout the franchise, throughout the trilogy, and I think that's what's really exciting, is once you start to get around to Mass Effect 2, you start to see that these are dynamic characters that are growing and sometimes changing quite significantly. In the case of maybe say Liara or Garrus or Rex for that matter. I think probably for a lot of people those are the two main draws, is the authenticity of the world building, namely galactic politics, and the crewmates. Your squad. That's what makes a lot of BioWare games is the cast of characters, and no different with Mass Effect.
Normandy, The beacon is secure.
This is amazing.
I know I missed a little extra cutscene that you're supposed to do before you activate the beacon. We'll have to do it another time. maybe I'll look at that scene separately.
Something must have activated it.
Roger, Normandy. Standing by.
Okay, I know that this is a little bit predictable. You know, even the first time you played it, everybody saw this coming. Something bad was going to happen when you activate that beacon. I don't care. Shepard's a hero. He or she, in this case he, you know, sacrifices himself for the crewmate. I don't care. Even though I don't even have player control in this instance, I mean, obviously, Shepard has to be the one to activate the beacon for the sake of the plot, and he's the one who has to get the message encoded into his brain and all that stuff. So, yeah, I know it's a predictable moment. I do not care. Shepard is a badass. He's a hero. He always sacrifices himself for the good of the crew, for the good of the mission. You know, I still like this moment. I don't care if it's predictable. I love it. Oh, and by the way, not a long time ago, on a video of the Relay, the series where I deconstruct the aesthetics in Mass Effect and Dragon Age, I talked about the Archon in Mass Effect Andromeda and how interesting that scene is aesthetically when we get introduced to the Archon, and I compared and contrasted it to this scene. This scene is by no means bad. It's not as subtle as the one with the Archon, but I do like how the lights actually start to flash inside of Sovereign while Saren is reacting. And again, no spoilers, but the indications and the implications there are actually quite good. And it also does say something about the mental state and the deteriorating state of Saren. I like this scene. I think when I mentioned it briefly, contrasting it to the scene with the Archon in Mass Effect Andromeda, maybe some people got the impression that I don't like this Saren scene. I actually like it quite a bit.
Dr. Chakwas,
but I do think BioWare has advanced in some sense as far as their visual storytelling and the subtlety and nuance of that in some of their later games. I also really like this scene for some, I don't know why, I just like the medbay scene, and I think it's like a nice sort of denouement for the opening mission. It kind of allows you to recap and knows where you're at, and then it sets you on the course towards the Citadel and towards, obviously,
About 15
you know,
hours.
the rest of the game and the larger
Something
world.
happened down there with the beacon, I think.
It's my fault. I must have triggered some kind of security field when I approached it. You had to push me out of the way.
You had no way to know what would happen.
Actually, we don't even know if that's what set it off. Unfortunately, we'll never get the chance to find out.
The beacon exploded. A system overload, maybe. The blast knocked you cold. The lieutenant and I carried you back here to the ship.
I appreciate it.
Physically, you're fine.
And I love that nonverbal response by Ashley. It's there, you know, it's there throughout the series. I don't know if it's just my perception of it. I feel like it was there more often in Mass Effect 1, where they did the nonverbal stuff. I love it. It's not the best animation. I don't want to get stuck talking about animations comparing Mass Effect 1 to any other games in the franchise, but you know, I like that stuff. I like the nonverbal stuff. I think it's a nice, you know, subtle touch.
I better add this to my report. It may... Oh, Captain Anderson.
How's our XO holding up, Doctor?
Well, all the readings look normal. I'd say the commander's going to be fine.
Glad to hear it. Shepard, I need to speak with you. In private.
Aye, aye, Captain. I'll be in the mess if you need me.
Sounds like that beacon hit you pretty hard, Commander. Are you sure you're
This is a
okay?
totally random side note. I love Kaylee Sanders because of the books and her relationship with Captain Anderson, but I've always wondered what a Chakwas Captain Anderson romance would have looked like. I don't know if I'm the only one.
Intel dropped the ball, sir. We had no idea what we were walking into down there. That's why things went to hell.
The Geth haven't been outside the Veil in 2 centuries, Commander. Nobody could have predicted this.
You said you needed to see me in private, Captain?
I won't lie to you, Shepard. Things look bad. Nihilus is dead. The beacon was destroyed and Geth are invading. The Council's going to want answers.
The Geth would have wiped out the whole colony if I hadn't stopped them.
I'll stand behind you and your report, Shepard. You're a damned hero in my books. That's not why I'm here. It's Saren, that other Turian. Saren's a Spectre, one of the best, a living legend. But if he's working with the Geth, it means he's gone rogue. A rogue Spectre's trouble. Saren's dangerous, and he hates humans.
Why?
He thinks we're growing too fast, taking over the galaxy. A lot of aliens think that way. Most of them don't do anything about it. But Saren has allied himself with the Geth. I don't know how.
And this is a really important instance of what I mentioned earlier about treating the threat or the risk of xenophobia from the part of aliens towards humans accurately or naturalistically in a science fiction setting. Yes, Saren is a very bad dude. You know, he doesn't speak for all Turians, as we know, as we watched throughout playing Mass Effect 1 and building a relationship with Garrus, etc. But it is interesting that that they treat that as the appropriate threat when taken in the way that Saren does it.
Butchering them.
We need to report this to the Council, Shepard.
What are we going to tell them? I had a bad dream?
Typical Shepard bluntness. And again, I'm repeating myself again. I think it's worth saying yet again. It might seem really simple. It might even seem a little bit contrived or a little bit predictable to some people. But the way that Mass Effect 1's pacing is set up. Now, don't get me wrong. Mass Effect 1 has pacing issues in the second act. I don't know if I've talked about this in a video before, but a long time ago I wrote an essay about it, and they did a great job addressing that with the way that the story is structured around building the team and getting ready to go through the relay in Mass Effect 2. In Mass Effect 2, they had a device which was building the ultimate team and the suicide mission. That device allowed them to sort of justify the free-roaming sort of explorative period of Mass Effect 2 while also keeping it, in balance with the pressing need of resolving the main plot. Mass Effect 1 didn't have that same thing. You're pretty much told that it's urgent to go find Saren, but then you're also told go and explore the galaxy and roam around a bunch of unexplored planets and talk to everybody and do side quests. And those two things are kind of at odds. And so, the urgency factor is sort of out of place in some instances. So, there we have it. Mass Effect 1, the opening mission. Still one of my favorites. I hope you've enjoyed this look back. I hope that this does serve as something useful, not just for veteran players. If you're a veteran player, of course, I hope that you're like me and you enjoy, as I mentioned during this commentary, I've played the trilogy over 10 times. I'm technically on my 12th playthrough right now. I'm actually in the middle of Mass Effect 2. Hopefully I'll be doing some commentaries like this for Mass Effect 2 and 3 as well. So if you're a veteran player who's just played this series a lot, you're probably like me and you actually enjoy taking a look back and having some discussion around Mass Effect 1. And if you're a new player, this is part of the reason why I wanted to do this. If you're new-ish to Mass Effect, maybe you've only done one playthrough of the trilogy, maybe you're in the middle of your first playthrough, maybe you've just started Mass Effect 1, maybe you've literally never played Mass Effect before, and you thought, hey, first mission, I'll watch this guy talk about it, and maybe that will make me feel like playing the series. That would be really cool. If you've never played Mass Effect before, and you've always wondered about it, and for some reason you found this video, and now after hearing me talk about it, you're going, yes, this seems like a cool beginning, and the franchise seems interesting, and I want to give it a shot, that would be awesome. So hopefully I'll have more stuff coming from the original trilogy. I will still continue to have more Mass Effect Andromeda stuff. Also, this is worth noting because this is now out publicly. I have a new streaming channel along with Gilder Thalin, my podcast co-host. We are going to do that channel jointly together. It's called CODEX Added. It's going to be a streaming channel. We're going to do some streams together. The first series that we're going to do is I'll be in the driver's seat of a Dragon Age Inquisition playthrough, and Katie is going to pick all of the mods, and she's actually going to be in charge of the decisions that I make for story and dialogue and all of that. So she's got way more playthroughs of Dragon Age under her belt than I do. I think she's got about as many for Dragon Age as I do for Mass Effect, so that's going to be a lot of fun. She's going to, hopefully get me into some situations that I've never seen before in Dragon Age. That'll be fun. So just shouting out that streaming channel, Codex Added. I'll include a link in the description so you can subscribe to that, because I will be streaming some Mass Effect stuff also at some point. I don't know if it's going to be first up. It might be. We'll kind of see how that goes. I'll be doing more of Mass Effect, and so Again, if you're a veteran and you enjoy looking back and having the discussion, please join me for that. If you're a new person and you are just kind of getting into Mass Effect and starting to enjoy maybe finding some YouTube creators who focus on Mass Effect content, you are in the right place. Although I am covering a bunch of story-driven games in general, BioWare games are, quite frankly, still the games that I play the most. I still play Mass Effect virtually every year, and Dragon Age not quite as often, but still pretty often. I hope you enjoyed this look back at Mass Effect. Please leave a comment down below if you are new, if you are a veteran, what are some of your favorite things about the Mass Effect franchise. Let's try and keep it sort of spoiler-free, because presumably there might be some newer folks watching this. And let me know if there is a particular mission in the Mass Effect franchise, in Mass Effect 1, 2, 3, that you would like to see me do a commentary on, and I'll see about getting that ready for us. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and until next time.